to Jason for closing that major deal, to Megan for graduating finally. We're proud of our children. Then he looked right at me, raised his glass again, and smiled like it was a joke. Well, maybe not all of them. The table broke into laughter. The kind that stings because it's not loud. It's smug. My cousins chuckled the hardest. The same ones who used to beg me for internship referrals 2 years ago. My mother reached for her fork like nothing happened. Didn't say a word. I stared into my drink. I could have stood up. I could have said something. But all I did was smile back. Just enough to make them wonder. What none of them knew, not even him, was that the papers had already been signed. And before the month ended, a name would disappear from a deed in a way they never saw coming. My name is Laura. I'm 35, and I'm not angry. I'm done pretending I wasn't watching. The clinking of forks resumed. The moment passed like spilled wine wiped from a white tablecloth. Quickly, carelessly. Jason was already back to bragging about market trends. Megan checked her phone, fake smiling at whatever she saw. Nobody looked at me, not even out of pity. I sat in silence while dessert was served, creme brulee. My dad's favorite. I had made sure of that. I'd called ahead, confirmed the menu, paid for the private room. He hadn't even acknowledged it. The speech, not planned, not for me. Just spontaneous cruelty, dressed up as humor. My mother, always the diplomat, finally said, "He didn't mean it like that." But she didn't turn to me. She said it to the empty air, to absolve herself. I just nodded. I didn't believe her. I don't think she did either. I could have stayed. Could have smiled through another hour of stories that erased me. Instead, I stood up quietly. I wasn't dramatic. I didn't even push the chair back fully, just enough space to leave. As I walked toward the exit, the hostess stopped me. "Everything all right, ma'am?" She glanced toward the table like she already knew the answer. I smiled gently. "It's handled," I said. Outside, I pulled my phone from my coat pocket, opened the email draft I had saved weeks ago, attached the final document, clicked send. In one action, the joint ownership was undone, not revoked, just redirected. It wasn't revenge, it was repositioning. They toasted to power. I transferred it. I didn't slam the door, I didn't even say goodbye. But I left them sitting at a table paid by me, laughing at a joke I no longer played a part in. I grew up in a house where silence wasn't peace. It was policy. If you were loud, charming, messy in a funny way, you were seen. If you cleaned up the dishes before anyone asked, you were convenient. That was me. Convenient. And it started long before I had words to name it. My brother Jason was the golden child, the star. He could spill juice on the sofa, and my mom would say, "Boys will be boys." I'd offer to clean it, and she'd just nod, like that was the natural order of things. It was never said out loud, but everyone knew who mattered more. When I was 10, I won a writing competition at school. The prize was a weekend trip to the state capitol, hotel, museum, everything. I came home with the letter in my hand, excited. My mom barely glanced at it. My dad asked, "Will Jason be there too?" When I said no, he said, "Then we can't go. It's too much driving for just that." It broke me a little, not all at once, but enough. By 12, I stopped talking about my wins. Instead, I tried to win love by being useful, folding my dad's shirts, making tea during his poker nights, bringing tools to him in the garage without being asked. I thought if I made myself necessary, I'd become visible. At 13, I remember Jason's birthday, a rented trampoline, balloons in 3 colors, all his friends there, The same year, my birthday dinner was takeout. No candles, no photos. Just a casual, "Oh, is it today?" I laughed it off, said I didn't mind. But later, I wrote my own name and icing on a leftover cupcake, then threw it away. My cousin Emily was the only one who noticed back then. She once asked during a barbecue, "Why is Laura always in the kitchen while we eat?" They said, "She likes it. She's helpful." Emily moved away the year after, and even she stopped replying to my texts eventually. But the memory that stayed with me, burned in, actually, came at 15. My dad was on the phone, pacing in the hallway. I was in the other room, behind the half-closed door. He said, "Jason has potential. Laura, she's smart, but she's soft, not built for anything big." I didn't breathe, didn't move, but something in me folded, sharp and permanent. That night, I opened my old diary and copied that sentence word for word. Then I taped it to the inside of a folder labeled Proof. I didn't know what I'd use it for. I just knew I'd never forget it. Years later, I still hear that line sometimes. It doesn't hurt anymore. Now it just pushes. They thought they knew who I was going to be, but they were only watching the surface. The version they ignored? She was already rewriting the ending. He said birthdays didn't matter anymore. That after 50 it was all just numbers. But I remembered how he used to get dressed up for his own father's, how he'd clean his shoes the night before. So I planned something small, thoughtful, something that said, "You still matter." He didn't know. That was the point. It was supposed to be a surprise. For once, I wanted him to feel seen. I booked the back room at Marino's, the old place he used to love, the one with the garlic knots he used to steal from the basket before anyone else could. I called 3 times to confirm the menu, requested the corner table, even asked them to play that Sinatra song he always hummed when he'd had a glass too many. Every detail mattered, because I thought he still mattered. I invited only 4 people: Mom, Jason, Megan, and one of his golf friends. Everyone said, "Yes, I paid the deposit, left a generous tip in advance, told the staff we'd arrive early," which we did, except for him. The first 20 minutes were filled with, "He must be parking," and "You know him, always running late." The next 20 became nervous glances at phones. I texted, called, left a voicemail. An hour in, people started to talk about other things. Jason was already halfway through his steak. Megan posted a boomerang of the candle on her glass of wine. No one looked uncomfortable, just inconvenienced. Then the waiter came by again. "Should we hold the main course?" I said no. There was nothing to wait for. Eventually, my father called. No apology, no explanation. Just, Jason needed help with paperwork. Time got away from me. I said, "I planned a dinner." He said, "I'll make it up to you." I knew he wouldn't. Back at the table, no one asked how I felt. Mom just said, "He means well." Jason laughed and said, "This tiramisu's amazing though. The cake came out anyway. I had ordered it with his initials. They looked like a joke now." I blew out the candles. Everyone clapped like it meant something. On the way out, the hostess handed me the receipt, folded neatly. She looked at me with the kind of sympathy you give someone after a car crash. "Everything looked perfect," she said. I nodded and walked out like my legs weren't shaking. That night, I logged into the internal system. I deleted him as my emergency contact. Then I deleted my name from the beneficiary field, not out of anger, out of clarity. That night didn't break me, but it made one thing clear. I was done trying to earn what should have been given, freely. I wasn't expecting an invitation, Not really. But when Megan posted a story of the brunch, tagging everyone but me, it still stung. They were all there. My dad at the head of the table. Jason, smiling beside him. Even my mother, wearing the necklace I helped her choose last year. Laughter, mimosas, and a caption that read, "Nothing like family." I tapped through the photos slowly. The same restaurant we used to go to after school plays. The same table we sat at when I got my first job. Except this time, there was no empty chair. Just a complete picture. Without me. I didn't text. Didn't comment. I just watched the pixels flick past and felt something cold settle in. Later that day, my coworker asked, "You didn't go to Megan's brunch?" I smiled. "Didn't know it was happening," I said. She blinked. "Oh, I saw it online. Looked big. I thought you... Never mind." That was the moment I realized. They weren't forgetting me. They were excluding me. On purpose. I opened WhatsApp and checked the family group. Still active. Still full of messages I wasn't reading. Out of habit, I scrolled up. Then I noticed something. A screenshot Jason had accidentally sent to the wrong chat, showing a different group. Same faces. Different title. Inner circle. Real fam. There it was. Proof that it wasn't about miscommunication. It was about categories. A week later, they planned a casual dinner for my mom's birthday. They didn't tell me directly, but I saw the group thread again. This time, no accident. Just boldness. Jason wrote, "Let's keep it simple. No need to complicate with too many people." My name wasn't mentioned. Not even once. I didn't reply. I didn't ask. I just opened the shared calendar and removed myself from every family task. No reminders, no RSVP tracking, no logistics. Then I went further. I logged into the admin panel of the Family Trust email. Removed my access. Removed theirs from anything I had created. I archived every receipt I'd saved from the past 3 years. Labeled them, numbered them. Kept a folder with screenshots, and a private note that read, "You weren't invisible. You were observing. Now you're documenting." I didn't block anyone. I didn't ghost. I simply stepped back. They didn't notice. But that's the thing about silence. It doesn't mean you've left. It means you're watching with intention. It started with a signature. Not mine. His. At a quarterly check-in with the accountant, the one my father still trusted blindly, I was there as usual. Just to listen. That's what they called it when they needed me in the room, but didn't want me to speak. Mr. Caldwell, gray-haired and deliberate, was explaining tax implications for the properties owned by the family company. He scrolled through PDFs, pointed at graphs, talked about amortization like it was gossip, and then, casually, he said, "Well, that one's still under joint ownership. Your name and Laura's, correct?" I blinked. My father didn't. He said, "Oh, that's old paperwork. It's not active." Caldwell replied, "Actually, it is. Unless you two filed to transfer the title. Which I don't have on record." The room went quiet for a second too long. Jason coughed. Megan checked her phone. My father smiled and said, "We'll sort it later." But later never came, and I didn't forget. That night, I dug through a folder I hadn't opened in years. Old agreements, drafts, proposals. In the back, stapled and faded, the document. My name, his, equal rights, equal access, no expiration. I checked the registration status, still active, still valid. The building wasn't just a property, it was the property. The one he used as leverage for everything, including Jason's new business. And I still had a say. Not that anyone ever asked. They forgot to remove me, and I had no intention of reminding them. 2 days later, I booked a meeting with a lawyer I met during a previous corporate dispute. He asked why I hadn't done this sooner. I said, I was waiting for the right moment, and for the right silence. We filed the paperwork. Quietly, legally, precisely. My father had always said, Laura doesn't really understand money stuff. I kept the recording from one of his calls. I played it once, in the cab ride home, then deleted it. Not out of pity, out of irrelevance. This wasn't about proving anything to him. It was about reclaiming what they assumed I'd forgotten. I didn't change the locks. I didn't freeze any accounts. I simply took back access to something I had helped build. I told no one. But I started sleeping better. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one you trained to believe she had no power. I wasn't loud. I was precise. It was Jason's engagement party. The family spared no expense. Gold-rimmed glasses, a string quartet, custom florals spelling their initials across the entrance. Megan called it elegant chaos. I wasn't invited. But I came anyway, not out of spite, out of timing. Because the documents were scheduled to arrive that day, with signatures they weren't expecting, I wore black. Not dramatic, just appropriate. Slipped in unnoticed during the toasts. The air was already thick with money and fake sentiment. I spotted my father near the head table, laughing with investors. Jason beside him, radiant. I didn't speak to anyone. Didn't smile. I waited near the exit, sipping water. The courier arrived 10 minutes later. Dressed sharply. Carried a white envelope. Asked for Mr. Harold Bennett. The silence after that name was louder than the music. He signed. Opened it. Read the top page. Paused. Then turned pale. Jason looked over his shoulder. His fiancée leaned in, then backed away, blinking. I didn't move. I didn't approach. I let the paper speak. Inside was the confirmation. The commercial property used to guarantee Jason's new business had been reassigned. No longer collateral, because Laura, the one who didn't understand money, had exercised her legal right to withdraw. They forgot to check. They forgot I existed. And now, I wasn't there to help. I was there to end things properly. My mother walked toward me, heels clicking too fast. She whispered, Laura, not now. Please don't embarrass us. I tilted my head. I'm not saying anything. And I didn't. Jason shouted. Something about sabotage. My father grabbed his phone. Megan stared at the ceiling like she was suddenly somewhere else. The guests kept sipping champagne. Polite confusion filled the room like perfume. The lawyer who helped me file everything was already 3 blocks away. He told me earlier, let the paper carry the weight. And it did. I left before dessert. The valet handed me my keys like I was royalty. No one followed me. Not one message that night. Later I heard they tried to call an emergency meeting, that Jason cried, that the funding froze, that my father blamed everyone but himself. I didn't show up for revenge. I showed up for clarity. They built their lives assuming I'd stay quiet forever. They forgot I could read, sign, and walk away too. There was no explosion, no dramatic fallout, no screaming matches or heartfelt apologies, just distance, measured, final. After the engagement party, no one called. No one said my name in the chat. They went silent in the only way they knew how, with avoidance. And I let them. At work, I handed off my final reports. Didn't explain. Didn't resign. I just stopped replying. I wasn't fired. They didn't dare. But the invitations stopped coming. The login expired. Eventually, someone else took over my role, unofficially. And I didn't argue. I moved into a smaller apartment. No view. No furniture with memories attached. Just enough space for who I actually was. On Sundays, I walked to the cafe 3 blocks down, ordered the same tea, sat by the window. Nobody asked me questions I didn't want to answer. Nobody asked anything at all. It was quiet, but not empty. Sometimes people talk about closure like it's a door you slam, but mine was a hallway. I kept walking down until the voices behind me became echoes, then whispers, then nothing. One morning, I opened the family group chat, scrolled to the last photo they sent. Jason, neither of them smiled with their eyes. They looked tired. I deleted the thread, not in anger, just because it was time. The documents had all been finalized. The reassignment was legal, clean, untraceable to outsiders. They couldn't undo it without asking for my signature, and they never would. I didn't need revenge. I didn't want them to hurt. I just didn't want to be the one holding their weight anymore. Mom tried calling once. No voicemail, just a missed call that stayed unread. I left the notification there, for days. Not because I didn't see it, but because I didn't need to respond to be done. I wasn't erased. I stepped off the page and let the story collapse without me. If this story reminded you of someone, maybe even yourself, just type, "I was there too," in the comments. You don't need to scream to be heard, and if you're done being the one they forget, subscribe. Here, silence is power.